Everyone's path to the NHL is a little bit different, and today we are going to examine several of those paths here on Locked On Flames.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. We're going to be diving into some prospect evaluations as well as just development check-ins, I guess you could say, and kind of examining where the sophomores are at and what this rookie class is looking like for the Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's dive right into this. Development is never a cookie cutter path. And I think that can sometimes get lost in translation somewhere along the way because someone from a previous draft class is playing better or someone from a newer draft class is playing higher up in the lineup. But regardless, each case for each player is so different. You might have guys who came up similar ways, but have not just different ceilings, but different different ceilings, and I guess just a different timetable. Like I look at Mackenzie Weegar and how he came up through the ECHL, or I look at a player like Torrey Krug, who was an undrafted free agent that played at Michigan State. I think of all of these athletes that, like a Connor McDavid who just 1 in a million, or players like Dustin Wolf, Connor Zary, and Rory Kerins, and the players we're going to talk about today that have had different paths, but ultimately the goal is still the same. And I think there's a lot of factors to keep in mind, right? Did this player come up through Hockey East or NCAA? Are they from juniors? What did their path look like through juniors? Are they a WHL prospect? Are they OHL? Like what was their timeline? And then, of course, how much AHL time did you have, or did they have? And what are their responsibilities? And like where do they slot in the lineup, and what are some fair comparisons? Because obviously there's going to be players in every draft class, regardless of the round, that have more success than a different player. And I think about the players that have unfortunately been listed as busts by the Flames because they couldn't properly develop them. I think of Matthew Phillips and how he was kind of seen as this young, speedy player that was going to come in and be part of this next wave, this next generation of Flames players. But he ended up going over to Washington, to the Capitals, and was just constantly in between the AHL and NHL, and then was with the Penguins, and he's kind of just been bouncing back and forth. And would his career look different had he had time at the NHL level while he was in Calgary, or if the Flames did something a little different with his development? And those are kind of questions that you find yourself, asking, because I think of especially Rory Kerins, right? Like he has had a phenomenal season with the Wranglers this year and has had success in the past, but it felt like at training camp, it was kind of like what is the issue? What is the reason the Flames are not calling this kid up? What is preventing him from taking this next step? Is there, I'm not saying this is the case at all, but is there like an attitude problem, or is there something else that is, I don't want to say a red flag. Like, I'm just thinking of all these possibilities. Even when there were spots in the lineup open, it didn't really make sense to necessarily call up, Walker Dewar, or play Walker Dewar over Rory Kerins. Kerins plays center and wing, so we know that he's versatile. I just think that when we're looking at Connor Zary, Jakob Pelletier, Martin Pospisil, Dustin Wolf, Matt Coronado, and Rory Kerins, we have to take all of these factors into account. And the biggest one that I can think of, all of these players were drafted in a timeline where at some point along the way, their development was impacted by the pandemic. And, you're not playing the same. You aren't playing at all. There's a pause. You're sick, so you're not playing. We'll talk about other injuries that come up along the way, but you just aren't playing that full season, and you're not getting in those same reps that you would any other time. So that's just something to think about. And all of these guys have been impacted by that one way or another. And I just think it's something to keep in the back of your mind when discussing these prospects and the development and what they have become so far. And there's a lot. It's not just one organization. It's literally prospect specific, and some players just develop at faster rates, and that is what it is. But coming up next, we're going to dive into the sophomores with Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil coming up here next on Locked On Flames. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates. I have been part of a team where we have needed to either bring an additional body in or replace someone, and Indeed is always the first place my managers would check. Now you can speed up the hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? You need Indeed. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jessica Belmosto. There is some exciting news that I'm cooking up and hope to announce either over the weekend or early next week. So we will see, fingers crossed. And let's talk about two players that were called up at the same time, that were fully unexpected call-ups and have made a true impact at the NHL level. We're talking about none other than Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil. They have been, well, let's rewind. Last season, when they were called up, they were making immediate impact, and it was more consistent. It was consistent. I would say that Pospisil kind of trickled off there, but I do think Zary kind of held his own and has continued to hold his own through this season as well. The unexpected call-up obviously was the right decision. I don't think anyone obviously, I don't think really anyone expected it just due to the circumstances at the time. Zary was coming back from an injury, and Pospisil had missed pretty much the entire season due to his fifth or sixth concussion. And, no one was quite sure if this was the right move or if it was something that was going to stick, but it ended up being the right call. And I just I'm very happy that it happened the way that it did, even though you know, Zary is out for indefinitely due to that nasty knee on knee injury against Anaheim last week, and wishing him nothing but the best, of course. But let's talk about Connor Zary. He was drafted in 2020 and had met with broken ankle or leg along the way, concussion, just really banged up, and wasn't able to necessarily find his footing as soon as you would hope, on top of playing through a pandemic. There were so many variables and adversity early on in his development that it was kind of like, yes, he was drafted in 2020 and probably should be in the NHL by now. But look at the circumstances that were dealt pretty much immediately after being drafted. So I would say that the fact that he did play well, he played consistently in the AHL is great. Obviously shows signs of what's the word I'm looking for? Tenacity, and the ability to overcome adversity. He played very well. And of course, his rookie campaign, he had 34 points in 63 games. And that is rather impressive for a player that, again, had a wonky start to development, or to not even just to development, but his NHL career. So that is definitely something to think about as well. And this season, prior to getting injured, he had racked up 22 points in 44 games. He was showing, and still is showing, signs of positive progression. Sure, there were stretches where you're like, is he ever going to score? Or, oh, he needed to get that one in. He's snake bitten. But that's just like the natural ebb and flow of the game. It doesn't matter if you are a rookie or if you are someone that's played for 5 or 6 years. It happens. There are times one of my first seasons covering this team, Matthew Tkachuk went, I think, 18 games without a goal. And it was bad. It was not a good time. So there are times where things like that happen, even to the best of the best. So, I think that all things considered, he is doing well. I would have to give him, I guess, a B plus. And it doesn't quite get an A because the Flames are the Flames. But no, I do think that he has been playing very well, and realistically, I would say that he is where he should be in terms of his draft class and things like that. Martin Pospisil. Oh, Marty. He was drafted in the 4th round of the 2018 draft. 2018. So it's been 7 years, 7 years. Yes, 7 years. That is a long time. And he did suffer from quite a few concussions along the way. And he had considered retiring. The toll that the concussions took on him physically and mentally were not great. And they were very difficult to deal with, especially he did an interview last season where he talked about how difficult it was being alone on the other side of the world, away from his family, while dealing with such heavy things. And I don't necessarily blame him at all. And this is where I have to draw harsh criticism. For a 25-year-old that plays with a tinted visor, has dealt with concussions, and knows the severity of like the consequences of concussions. I would expect him to be a little more um cautious and aware of how he's moving and throwing his body around. I would say that he does he's right up there with Nikita Zadorov in penalty minutes. He and Matt Rempe both have the same amount of game misconducts. But people don't want to put him in the same conversation as Rempe because Pospisil isn't necessarily a big hulking dude like Rempe that fights a lot. But no, we have seen him struggle with consistency offensively. He had 63 points in 24 games, or sorry, oh my gosh, 24 points in 63 games rather last season, which is pretty fair, pretty decent. And then right now he only has 13 points, 2 goals in 43 games. That's not great. And you have to wonder, what is it? Is it because he really benefited from playing on a line with Kadri and Zary last season, but Kadri has been playing very well with Huberdeau. So like, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of deal. Like, I don't know what they're necessarily expecting here. But I do have to say, I predicted it over the summer. One of my biggest predictions going into the season was that Martin Pospisil was going to regress, and it would be to a higher extent, I guess that would be the right word, than Zary. Wish nothing but the best for these two. You guys know I love an underdog, and I think that both of these two really bring something special to the team, and were part of this first wave of integrating the youth and truly raising heck for a cause to get these younger kids up in the lineup over some veterans. But coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show with some more players that are in some conversations for some pretty serious awards coming up next here on Locked On Flames. If you are like me, or you know anything about me, you know that I love going to live events. Concerts and sporting events are my top 2, but I will never pass up an opportunity for a theater or a comedy show. And my best memories of this hockey season have come thanks to Game Time. Game Time is the ticketing app for all of your one-stop shopping, and they have a new feature for your favorite events called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That is exactly how I got my tickets to Montreal when the Flames were in town, and how I got my tickets to the Battle of Alberta up in Edmonton in October. So easy. Spent less than 10 minutes both nights searching for tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thanks, everyone, for making Locked On Flames part of your day. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube as well. All right, this is the meat and potatoes of this episode, I would say. This is the hefty chunk of the Flames lineup, the Flames roster, really. You have Dustin Wolf, Pelts, Coronado, Rory Kerins. Like, these are the players that you've wanted to see either as full-time NHLers or get a shot at the lineup. So let's talk about it. Starting off with the hottest of hots. That would be Dustin Wolf. He was drafted in the final round of the 2019 draft. Small, undersized goaltender that the Flames really liked and took a chance on. And I would say it's paying off. He has had a standout performance this year, which has had his names in conversations for the Hart Trophy, the Vezina, and the Calder. That's kind of crazy when you think about it, because when you look at the other names in those conversations, those are elite players. Hard to define Dustin Wolf as elite with such a small sample size, but he is looking great, and it is so fun to watch him night in and night out. Right now, he has a .916 save percentage with 23 games played. He has reached 20 career wins with the Flames, faster than anyone in franchise history other than Mika Kiprusoff. So again, great company to be in. Love to see it. You know what you're getting from him night in and night out. I want to see him starting the chunk of the remaining of a good chunk of the remaining games for this season, simply because he will likely be taking on a larger starting role next year, whether the Flames extend Dan Vladar or if they go out and get someone in free agency or whatever the case may be there. And Matt Coronado, you guys, I am so happy for this kid. He has worked hard. This is another, all of these players have also been impacted by shortened seasons or pandemic rules, whatever the case may be. And just to see the success and triumph and coming out on the other side is huge. So Matt Coronado, coming out of Harvard last year, signed his entry-level contract, and last year was his first professional hockey season. And that is quite the adjustment. You know, the traveling, the lifestyle changes, being across the continent from your family, you know, things that would likely make any 20-year-old, you know, kind of nervous and shaky for a little bit. But he did struggle with his skating. He struggled with his scoring. And both of those are nowhere to be found this season. He has outgrown both of those negative habits, I guess, or that he has improved significantly with his skating. He worked with the skating coach this past off season, and he has 10 goals in 38 games. And though most of those goals are clutch goals, which the Flames need, his shot along with Zary's are going to go a long way in this Flames organization. And, you know, Coronado did have a turbulent start to the season because he was on the NHL roster, didn't play the first 3 or 4 games, and then played a few, and then ended up getting sent down, and his agent wasn't happy about it. And shortly after that, he was recalled and has been on a tear ever since. And sometimes that's just the spark you need to get you going. And I don't I don't like to give NHL executives the full benefit of the doubt, because sometimes you're just like, what? Why would you make that decision? But this is one of those times where I feel like they truly knew that this was what the kid needed. And Jakob Pelletier, what a guy. This is someone that, like, you know, in like those true crime documentaries when it's like whenever they walked into the room, they just lit up every room they walked into. They had no enemies. I feel like that is Jakob Pelletier, and just the energy, the hype, the excitement, the good vibes that he brings to the Flames locker room, even in the worst of times, which I think is like half the battle. Both him and Coronado have had time in the AHL, been in betweeners. Um, Pelletier had 2 goals the other night against Chicago in the first 20 minutes. He was on hat trick watch going into the second period, and just his energy and determination is impressive. And of course, you know, who had those primary assists on those goals? Rory Kerins in his NHL debut. This is what people have been waiting for when it comes to being a better team. They have needed to integrate the youth for a while. And at the capacity they're doing it now, it's great. I'm not going to sit here and complain that, you know, there's a log jam on the back end and it doesn't make sense. Like, we are here to focus on what is currently in front of us, and we don't have control over much of anything. So I really do appreciate the way that things have played out for these players this season. Obviously, I wish Zary was in the lineup. Tonight, the Flames play the St. Louis Blues again, and we're hoping it's a different outcome. They're rolling with the same skaters as last time, and Wolf is starting. So we will have to see what lies ahead for these youngsters tonight. But it is just very exciting and very it's a positive experience and something that, you know, Flames fans should continue to watch for. But that will do it for me today on this fine episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic week. Remember to stay safe, stay warm, stay cool, stay dry, stay hydrated, and subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And we will be back tomorrow for an end of the week episode recap of whatever happens in tonight's game against St. Louis and any news in between. Have a great day.